Florence Dowrick, a MajorTim.space honorary young ambassador. This is Ellie Taylor-Brewin, a MajorTim.space young ambassador. Today, we will be interviewing Fred Haise, Apollo 13 astronaut and MajorTim.space patron, who will be providing some insight into the recent successful Artemis 2 mission. Fred, could you please introduce yourself?
Okay. My name is Fred Haise. I live in Houston, Texas these days, and I flew a mission to the moon a long time ago. In fact, today was the launch of Apollo 13, 56 years ago, long time ago. And of course, we just witnessed the Artemis 2 mission that has gone back to the moon and looped around it at a much higher altitude than I went around, which was only a little over 130 miles above the moon, and broke our record, very small record for height. And anyway, they've had a very successful mission. I was happy to see that, and lots of media coverage for the highlights of the mission, pictures in particular. And which I'm happy for to allow continued support to continue Artemis program to land on the moon eventually here.
Thank you. So this is my first question for you. Okay, so beyond the initial excitement of returning humans to the moon, what is the big picture goal for the Artemis program, and how do missions 3 and 4 specifically build towards a future where the moon is just more than a place for space agencies to explore?
Well, I'm not sure your question was about the hard day. They obviously have a plan now that will send the next mission into Earth orbit, because they really do not have a proven lander craft, and it will be tested in orbit with the capsule in Earth orbit, much as was done, quite similar to the Apollo 9 mission.
Yeah.
That was done in Apollo with the capsule command and service module and the landing craft by Jim McDivitt's flight during that time. So Apollo 9 and the next mission is pretty much the same. I think they're based on that success of the lander. They're proposing possibly on the mission beyond that to affect the landing on the moon.
Thanks.
Do you see Artemis as completing the journey that Apollo began, or as something just completely new?
Well, the newness of Artemis is, I think, eventually they're planning landings and also based hopefully on good pictures they got on Artemis 2 of area around the South Pole. The South Pole and some of the craters, because they're at a depth where they'd never get sunlight, there's supposedly ice that has been seen, observed. And obviously, if you melt ice, you got water, which would be very useful. With the second thought of the later, longer range, creating a lunar base. And so that area around the South Pole, where there would be water available, was thought to be a good place to have that lunar base in operation. But of course, that's quite a ways downstream. Right now, they're just working toward successive missions beyond the one just flown to get the lander checked out and safe, be sure it'll be safe to go affect the first landings in that area down near the South Pole. All the landings on Apollo were pretty much on the equatorial areas of the moon. One went up on the front side, and one went, Apollo 17, I think, had a landing a little bit to the north, exactly from the equator, but did not stray very far from the equator of the moon.
Yeah. Okay, my next question. Significant technological progress has been made since the Apollo era. In your view, which of these modern advancements will prove most pivotal to the success and sustainability of the Artemis program?
Well, I can't answer that exactly because I am not familiar with the hardware in the current Orion capsule, but I just looking at pictures I've seen. They of course have these nice touchscreen uh, glass cockpits, they call it, which airplanes have today too. Whereas all our instruments and switches and were all hardware, and
Yes,
including the instruments on our panel, a little 8 ball that moved around that gave you attitude information, that sort of thing. But also in the computing power has greatly grown and available. Our little hand-wired computer in Apollo, the memory was about 1/10 of a megabyte.
Mm.
1/10 of a megabyte. And today, I have a I see my phone.
Yeah.
This has like 2 gigabytes. This little flip phone. I had a smartphone, but I broke it. My grandson told me Papa should get this one because it's sturdier and it doesn't break if I drop it again. But we had like 1/10 of a megabyte, and this little bitty phone has 2 gigabytes. And of course, y'all have probably smartphones with 20 to 60 gigabytes. But at any rate, that's that how they use computing power is obviously abundant, lots of memory.
Yeah.
They also have better communications, as I understand. They could pass up, I don't know if it was faxes or whatever, but information that way. And they had, of course, they had voice with the family. We had no, only voice we had was with the Capcom. In mission control, that was the only person that we talked to in Apollo days. So we couldn't talk to anybody else on the ground. That was all the Deke Slayton, I think, took over the mic once during our mission to give us some advice. But other than that, no communication. So any new, and we had lots of changes on our flight and new procedures that had to be copied, but that was all voiced up, written on paper, line by line of the procedures. Took a long time with voice, but that's kind of changes I've seen and how you operate today. And of course, that's done even on space station.
It's changed a lot in the last 50 or so years. It's insane.
It really has, hasn't it? What key knowledge did NASA gain from the Apollo program that you think is still relevant today?
Well, obviously, it's the NASA pushed even in Apollo days bigger computers. They need as you saw the movie that told about the ladies that did hand computing virtually for the early trajectory analysis, like had to be done in Mercury program. NASA knew they were going to need much more computing power to do rendezvous and to do the trajectory analysis to and from the moon. So they pushed hard, and IBM in particular, I think, helped to develop the biggest mainframe computers. And of course, that's grown and unbelievable since, with even now, as you know, around the world, these big data centers now to support the upcoming growing AI utilization in various ways. So that just has kept going and going. Rocket engines, for instance, take that part of space flight, have not advanced much from Apollo and ours in the case shuttle. The four liquid engines on the big booster that took them to the moon on Artemis 2, those were shuttle engines. In fact, as I understand, one of them had flown a couple of times before, even on shuttle one of the four. And now the solid rockets were new. They were bigger diameter than the two solids that were used on space shuttle. So they were, you want to call it an advance in solid rocket size growth, and did produce more thrust. But there's not much. They keep talking about nuclear rockets and things, but none of them are really gotten to a point of being operational, which would be nice to have, to think of going to Mars, which is a very long trip with the current technology. like something like 7, 8 months one way. So it'd be nice to have something that could take you a little faster
Yeah.
to get there and back quicker. And particularly, I'm thinking very long range. I guess Elon Musk is trying to get perfected a new vehicle called a Starship that he has sponsoring and has had a number of test flights, but as yet is not, I would call, fully perfected.
Okay. NASA proceeded with the crewed Artemis 2 mission despite the heat shield chipping on the Artemis 1 Orion spacecraft, with unexpected char loss. In your era, would a material anomaly like this have grounded the upcoming missions until solutions were implemented and a further test conducted, or was the pressure to fly just as high as it is today?
Wow, that went along. I still had a hard time understanding the question.
So in the Artemis 1 Orion spacecraft, there was char loss and there was a chip, but the Artemis 2 mission still flew. When you were in the Apollo era, would this have not happened? Would you have stayed back and tried to fix the issue before flying again, or would you have just gone ahead?
We'd gone ahead with, I'm sorry, with what nothing went wrong really on Artemis 2.
Yeah.
They had a problem, I think, with the toilet, the commode, which really wouldn't have stopped. I didn't worry about that. That would have not stopped them from going, even if they could not have gotten it fixed.
Yeah. I'll try and
they had alternate means to take care of things without using the commode.
Yeah.
So that was the only problem they really had on the mission.
Yeah, so I'll rephrase it kind of because it's a long question. But so there was a problem with Artemis 1 Orion spacecraft, but they still flew Artemis 2. Would that have happened when the Apollo missions were still going through, or would it have been different?
I still don't understand the question. They were really are you talking about the comparison of the capsules?
Kind of, just about how things were run.
The same mission could have been flown in Apollo. We could have had if we wanted to, could have had a flight that would have just gone up and looped around the moon.
Yeah.
Now, what they had that was greatly improved, as I saw from the photography, they had better cameras than the ones we used in Apollo. The resolution and definition I saw pictures was much greater than anything was taken from Apollo missions closer to the moon. But even of the what was called the Lunar Reconnaissance Satellite, it was a satellite that was sent around the moon to shoot pictures. And I saw one comparison of a picture they took of an area and the picture from that reconnaissance satellite, and their pictures were much better.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, I understand some of the questions are a bit text heavy. Ellie, would you like to ask the next one?
Yes. How different is astronaut training for Artemis compared with your Apollo era training?
Well, I don't think it changed. They did a lot of the same things we did in getting ready to fly, to know the spacecraft, to understand what failures might happen, and were trained, as well as mission control, considering possibility of failures, what they would do. But their training was much stretched out, though. The mission was kept getting delayed. It was a funding problem, really, for the program that stretched it out. So they had a very long training period, several years. Whereas when I trained Apollo 8, when I got assigned to that mission, I trained 6 months behind Bill Landers, who got to fly the mission. Then I went into another training cycle on Apollo 11 and trained another 6 months, just six months, backing up Buzz Aldrin, who unfortunately got to fly. I didn't, and walked on the moon. And then I trained 10 months for Apollo 13. And it kept stretching out, though. On Apollo 16, the backup I did there to John Young, I trained a little over a year. So that was just because, again, the budgets had been cut, and they stretched out the launch schedules just to do it with less funding. And that's why those times stretch out. We could have, between Apollo 7 and Apollo 11, we launched every 2 months. Every 2 months we went to flew those missions.
Wow.
Okay, this is my next question. There has been some media speculation regarding whether NASA can realistically land humans by 2028, with the Orion capsule and the SpaceX lander being built up of different entities. Do you see a risk in the lack of integrated all-up testing that was so central to your own training?
Well, progress obviously depends on two things. It'll depend on the success of each mission as it goes along. That would allow to consider safely taking the next step, for instance, the next one in Earth orbit to check out the lander. Depends on how successful it looks for the lander to consider, do I go try to land on the moon the next time? Of course, the schedule and timing that's reflected in any program, be it Apollo or be it Artemis, is going to be reflected on the continuing funding support from the U.S. government. And of course, components of it in the landing mission, of course, are involved with the European Space Agency and other commercial space booster products, that boosters that will be needed, and ultimately, and certainly in the building the lunar base, ultimately, which is a long-range plan. But it's really, it's always been a question of progress to some degree is directly related to the funding support.
Yeah.
If it's not funded, it'll stretch out, as we've seen in Artemis.
Yeah. The Artemis 2 crew included the first female and the first person of color to travel to the moon. In your opinion, how has the space industry evolved to enable greater diversity compared to the Apollo era?
Well, I don't think the diversity matters. It's a matter of the background and experience of people you want to fly a given mission and what they have to do. For instance, on space station, compared to Apollo was the first new development. It was a much more manual capability would be involved, particularly landing on the moon, where we had that lunar landing training vehicle, which out of 5 vehicles, we lost 3 from people ejecting and in training. And so they wanted, I call it more, at least test piloting experience. Because the test pilot, obviously, it deals with new hardware, new in the aircraft business. I was in 7.5 years testing aircraft differences, and that you have to be able to, same way, worry about with a test plan, much like a mission plan that we did in a test business I was in, to worry about how to safely approach getting the data that you needed, and worrying about contingencies of what may go wrong and how you handle contingencies, that sort of thing, failures. So that was the same kind of business that would be a person would be involved with. It turned out at the time we flew, I don't remember that year. It was around at that time. That was the first time the military allowed women in to fly airplanes, and initially they were limited to transport airplanes. Of course, today women can fly fighters or anything in the military. So there was some limitation that way. Of the program I've watched of the ladies who were tested and thought to be applicable for the program, they also would need engineering. There were a couple of the ladies that were considered some had flight experience, but the engineering was also a very important part of to the design development of the vehicle, because a test pilot doesn't just sit around for years to them to say everything's ready, go fly the airplane. A test pilot is normally a part of the team. In the case of Apollo or shuttle, for shuttle, I spent 4 years in the program office with the design development of shuttle. So it's engineering was not just flying the mission or flying the vehicle. Engineering was very important at the start of the program to get the design development done with the consideration of the operator who would be flying it.
Thank you.
Thank you. How does the recent reconstructing of Artemis 3 into a low Earth orbit docking demonstration and the subsequent push of the first human landing to Artemis 4 ensure a safer and more sustainable foundation for established lunar base camps and eventual crewed missions to Mars?
Don't understand the jump to Mars. What?
Oh, I can repeat the question if you want. Sorry, some of these are quite long. Okay. How does the recent reconstructing of Artemis 3 into a low Earth orbit docking demonstration and the subsequent push of the first human landing to Artemis 4 ensure a safer and more sustainable foundation for established lunar base camps and eventual crewed missions to Mars?
Okay, now I think the base is beyond those missions.
Yeah.
Those missions are still going to be, obviously, the first one is just to say, hey, can we successfully land in the area near the South Pole? I think they're hoping to be able to do, and safely find areas to do that.
Yeah.
And more in that sense, to rather than building, then they're going to be building a lunar base in their third and fourth missions. So it just kind of setting the stage for a possibility of desirable landing sites, and to some degree the exploration in the area, and particularly if they, by the second one, decide even to land a little closer to where there may be water, to obviously verify that indeed there's ice, which can be converted to water in that area. But the actual construction of the lunar base would involve a much better logistics capability to bring the hardware, the equipment, and to construct and to build that base and have logistic support. It's much like we have bases at Antarctica. They could not exist without a resupply.
Yeah.
You're not gonna find many plants and food laying around in Antarctica, so they need to be continually refurbished with equipment. Some things break down, so they need hardware, food, everything to keep those bases alive in Antarctica. So you need a good logistics system in place to operate.
It's a really interesting subject to look into it, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
My final question is, the photographic data that NASA has already released from Artemis 2 features great detail of the moon's topography. Was the dark side of the moon, as seen in the recently shared photographs, similar to as you personally remember it? And how did viewing these images make you feel, having seen the moon from a similar vantage point yourself in far more challenging circumstances during Apollo 13?
Okay, well, on my trip, we only had a brief one pass around, like an hour passing around the backside. We were at a little higher altitude. All the normal missions went in at and set orbits up at around 60 miles, and our path was a little higher, not much higher, but 61 point something miles higher than the normal orbits. So we were only up to 131 miles. It gave us a little broader view of the areas. And with nothing to do, we were just coasting. Jack and I got out cameras, and we were tourists, so we shot. We had black and white film
Yeah.
and color with the Hasselblad cameras that we had available, a German made camera, and shot a lot of pictures. What we could see around the backside, a couple of pictures I still treasure. I shot Tsiolkovsky. It was a very prominent feature on the backside, dark with a central peak, named after the Russian gentleman Tsiolkovsky, who was the early rocket designer in Russia. And the other one was a broader, did not have a central peak crater on the backside. None of them were as big as what we see from the front side. They were smaller, even the dark areas were smaller. But it was named Sea of Moscow. Russia got naming rights because they first sent a craft without people around the moon that shot pictures. So that gave them the naming rights for those major features. But there weren't many of those on the backside that at least area we covered, which was about half the backside, about half the moon. We went. The front side was half lit, and the backside was half lit.
Yeah.
So at any rate, that was our story of going around, because we had a wait time till the next maneuver, 2 hours after we passed the moon, using a decent engine again, the landing craft. See, our spacecraft was shut down even before we got to the moon. Our spacecraft was dead from the explosion, and so it just lay dead for 4 days while we headed back. Okay.
Okay, this is the last question. Okay. The Apollo missions inspired a generation to dream big. Do you believe that Artemis will shape the dreams and ambitions of the children growing up today? And what advice would you give to young people who want to follow in your footsteps and pursue a career in space exploration?
Well, obviously, they're going to need some of the same ingredients that are needed today. Like, if you're going on a mission on space station today, that's established, been in operation 25 years now with people aboard. I would say the greatest talent needed is scientific, or, various varieties of scientific, because a space station, for instance, is a laboratory, a scientific laboratory going around at 250 miles above the Earth in orbit. And so it's a little different what kind of talent you may need. I actually have been encouraging for 50-something years now. I use Skype with a lot of schools before, but I sorted up in the last 2 years with my webmaster, more directed events with schools. For instance, last year, Logan and I together did 84 Zoom links with schools and Civil Air Patrol group in the summertime. And this year, it looks like the bookings we have so far, we will exceed that number. I'm international. Incidentally, I've not done any to England for whatever reason. I did schools in Mexico City, Ecuador, Cape Town, South Africa, Paris, France, and Portugal. And last year were some international events in that mix. And, we'll continue that to spark at least the thought of space and exploration, and the technical needs they're getting in school that could be applied. Mathematics, for instance, or the science they get in school, even through high school. But mainly what I try to seed in their minds, these young people, is that they're born with talent. Everyone is born with talent, and I tell them to keep thinking about what you like in school, what courses may be more fun to do, what you might want to read more about, what interests you, to funnel that talent you have into a career ahead that would best use that talent. I don't try to tell them to be astronauts or pilots. That may not be their proper avocation, but mainly to focus on using that talent. And they will be much successful, much more successful and happy in their lives ahead. So that's the kind of little one message I hope I can seed into their minds that they will keep thinking about. And as they look forward and have goals that they will work toward.
Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come speak with us. It's been amazing to interview you.
All right. No,
I've absolutely loved meeting you. It's been really, really amazing. Thank you very much.
Okay. I thank you. Enjoyed meeting with you again after 4 years now. All right. Been great.
Bye.
Maybe we'll have another gathering after the next mission in our Earth orbit.
Yeah, hopefully.
Okay. All right. Y'all have a good day. All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye-bye.